What were some of the repercussions throughout this whole situation?
That's why it's hard, because I'm not trying to come across like, oh, this situation, like, I'm not trying to victimize myself. I don't want pity. I don't deserve pity. We messed up. I just want a second chance to be like, I recognize I messed up. And for so long, I wasn't able to talk about this because of the legalities behind it. I never got to say, I'm really sorry that this happened, or I really own that this was a big mess up on everybody's part.
Now, her parents are in jail right now, and Lachlan began serving her 2-month sentence in October after pleading guilty and pleading guilty to paying $500,000 to get Olivia Jade and her sister Isabella into USC as rowers. I mean, really? Massimo Giannulli is serving 5 months for his role in all this. During the interview, Olivia Jade also talked about her relationship with her parents.
When this happened with your parents, I'm sure you were angry.
Or were you angry? We're assuming that you were angry.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Were you angry, or
to be
you
honest, I wasn't angry.
Got it.
And I think it's because I didn't have a good understanding of what just happened.
Right.
I didn't see the wrong in it. That's embarrassing within itself, that I walked around my whole 20 years of life not realizing, like, you have insane privilege. You're like the poster child of white privilege, and you had no idea.
Right.
And so I think that although I've had a really strong relationship with my mom and my dad my whole life, I was definitely confused when this all came out, and I went and confronted them about everything. They didn't really have much to say except, like, I'm so sorry.
All right, let's get some more details from Court TV special contributor Ashley Banfield.
Vinny, I guess you could call this a blockbuster interview because Olivia Jade has been quiet all this time and her parents are in prison. And I think it begs the question about whether she really needed to do this interview. Let's not forget, her parents were charged and effectively convicted with their plea bargain and are serving time. She was 18 when all of this happened and ostensibly co-opted by her parents. She's 21 now, extraordinarily eloquent in this interview and very, very contrite, I should add as well. But it is a little odd to sort of be thinking, what could her parents be thinking? I mean, they must be mortified that they've kind of left her to clean up this mess. And that's effectively what she did. I want to bring in Steve Helling, senior writer for People magazine, who has covered this story as well. And, Steve, I really thought about you and wondered what you felt when you watched this interview with Olivia Jade and Jada Pinkett and her family, just your overall impressions.
I understand why she decided that she needed to do this. Olivia Jade is a public figure. She's an Instagram influencer. She does work with brands and wants to, keep doing that. So she did have to do the apology to her. I understand why she did. The problem is that there's really not anything she can say that's going to make everybody happy. I mean, we know that the deck is stacked towards people of great means like Olivia Jade. We understand that she has already started her life on third base while the rest of us don't. So, having her acknowledge that is great, but I don't know that really anything that she said would change anybody's mind. We kind of know it's unfair, and her saying it doesn't really help.
Interesting you would say that. I was curious, to say the least, as to what her level of contrition would be. You can really see it in someone's eyes. You can feel it during these interviews, whether it's really there or whether this is just a tour. Personally, I really did feel like she had taken, responsibility for this. I want to play a quick clip of how she articulated that in this interview. Take a peek.
I think what was important was for me to come here and say, I'm sorry. Right. I acknowledge what was wrong. And I wasn't able to say that for so long. So I think people almost thought, oh, she must not care. That must have not affected her, and she wasn't moved by that. And I took my privilege and all my blessings for granted, and I never thought anything of it. And that's what really rocked me. I was like, this is wrong. You need to talk about this. You need to do it publicly because the situation was public.
Right.
And then you need to move forward and do better.
I know that that's not going to be good enough for a lot of people, Steve, but I keep reverting back to this notion that she's not the one that did it. She was the kid being brought up to think this was okay.
And we do have to give her credit for understanding what was wrong with the way things were done. I'm not saying she's not sorry. I'm sure she's very sorry. But I also guarantee you, Ashley, you and I have been around for a very long time. You know that somebody helped coach her about what she was going to say. There's no way that she didn't talk to some sort of media expert, because that's how this is done. So, I think that she did a good job. I think owning it is great. I think speaking out is great. And certainly I think that we shouldn't have to cancel her or anything like that. But I don't know that the average person who sees it is going to have any real compassion for her, only because, like I said, she started life on third base and the rest of us didn't. So it's hard for us to sometimes feel sorry for somebody like that.
I hear you. And, I didn't know until Olivia Jade said this in the interview, but Lori and Massimo, her parents, did not go to college and, earned their way into their remarkable success. And when I say that, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. Massimo himself, just a tycoon with his clothing brand. And then Lori, of course, with her phenomenal, success as an actor. One of the things that stood out, and I don't know how you feel about this or whether you got the same vibe, from the beginning of the interview almost to the very end, Adrienne, Jada Pinkett Smith's mom, who, by the way, looks amazing. I thought it was her sister looking at her, but she seemed very sort of focused on white privilege throughout the interview. And I want to just play a quick moment from sort of the beginning of the interview, right sort of from the outset. Have a look.
She called and wanted to come to our table, and we all had very different feelings about it.
Yeah. I fought it tooth and nail. I just found it really ironic that she chose 3 Black women to reach out to for her redemption story. I feel like here we are, a white woman coming to Black women for support when we don't get the same from them. It's just, it's bothersome to me on so many levels. Her being here is the epitome of white privilege to me.
And, Steve, it sort of went from there to Olivia coming out. And there was a slight, bit of, I don't know whether you could say emotional hostility. I mean, it certainly wasn't verbal hostility, but you could feel the tension there. Absolutely. And yet later, Adrienne sort of acknowledged it wasn't necessarily white privilege, it was financial privilege, because there were other people in the college scandal of different races. What did you feel about that whole sort of, that unspoken thing that was going on?
I understand it. I understand it completely. And I do think it's interesting that Olivia Jade chose this forum to come out and give her apology. She's basically sitting at a table with 3 Black women, hoping to redeem her image and hoping that they will help her do that. And, you can't, I don't want to read too much into her thinking behind it, but I do think that, generally speaking, a white woman of means like Olivia Jade has an easier time getting people to forgive her than other people might. And I think that there is some reason for hostility, might not be the right word, skepticism. There is some reason why, the ladies at the round table, at the red table, would be a little bit skeptical. Why are you here? Why should we help you, rehabilitate your image? I felt like it was a very respectful conversation that they had, even though it was tense.
Yeah. I think so too. Yeah. But by the way, were you surprised that she chose the red table and Facebook Watch as opposed to say, the Today Show or Anderson Cooper or some really big primetime, multi-million viewership venue?
Oh, I wish she'd chosen People Magazine, but she didn't. I'm not surprised in some ways. I think it was, I'm certainly a big fan of what they do at Red Table. And, I think that if you want to get your point across and you want to be able to have as much time as you want to say what you need to say uninterrupted, it's a great forum to do it. And I don't know what, if any, if there was a relationship between the two families. I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but I would say that it was really good. I was really impressed with the fact that they didn't just allow her to say her piece unchallenged. They did challenge her, but they did it in what I think was a very respectful way, and a very, what we're missing these days is dialogue. And there was some dialogue there. And that's really kind of refreshing. When you look at what we do a lot of the times where we're just talking at people, they were really talking with each other. And that was great.
Or reducing people down to a headline or a clip instead of giving them the full context of, trying to make their piece, which I appreciated. The other question I had for you was about the sort of, I think, bombshell that she dropped about having not spoken to her parents yet, saying that they've been under COVID protocols in prison. She has, and she's very, very close with her mom in particular. Were you surprised she hasn't had a chance to speak to either of her parents yet?
Well, I'm not totally surprised, because when you think about prison, you do think prison, limits the time that you have with people you love. That's part of the punishment of prison. So I'm not really that surprised. I would have thought that there would have been a phone call or something at this point. But I do understand that with COVID protocol, everything is up in the air, and there's probably a reason why she wasn't able to talk to them yet. I assume that she will talk to her mother soon. I'm sure she misses her terribly.
So, Olivia mentioned to the ladies of the Red Table that she lost a lot of her endorsements. She was too embarrassed to go back to school. Obviously life changed profoundly for, a girl who was effectively 18 coming out of high school, who didn't, and acknowledged that she didn't even really know what was wrong with what they did. She was that sort of young and immature about these very grown-up issues. Do you think she's going to be able to recover or recapture any of that early success?
I think that she will have to go in a different direction. I'm sure she can recover. I do want to say that I'm trying to remember what life was like for me when I was 18. And I would like to think that if my parents put me on some crew rowing machine and said, we're going to send these pictures to college, even at 18, I would have said, wait, what? Why are we doing that? So as much as I do think, she obviously was more innocent than her parents in the situation, I still think that at 18, there should have been some gut that told her, I don't row crew. Why are we pretending like I do? This isn't right. And it doesn't sound like she ever had that moment until she got caught. So that's one thing where I say advertisers, partners, people who are going to work with her might take a minute and think, is this really where we want to spend our dollars? And they may not.
Right. And look, we have laws that you could be sentenced to death at 18. So we acknowledge as a society that you're culpable at 18. I just keep thinking these are your parents and they're your greatest influencers. And if they're saying it's okay to roll through a stop sign, according to some parents too, not to suggest they're the same. I'll tell you what, Steve Helling, I'm really glad there were no cell phones and pictures when I was 18, or we would not be having a TV conversation right now. I'll be honest. Well, listen, I so appreciate it. Steve, it's always great to talk to you. And I just thought this was such a great interview, and I knew you'd have a lot to say about it. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Vinny, I should tell you that Steve and People Magazine has done some great coverage on this story, and it is available on the newsstands. I always love saying that, the newsstands, because, in New York, you go by newsstands. I don't know how many other newsstands you go by, I guess in the grocery store, but it's available this Friday on newsstands in People Magazine. Great story. And I think just a good moment for us all to sort of look at how we would all behave at a certain time of our lives and what we expect out of Olivia Jade.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Ashley. Yeah, pick it up right in the checkout aisle at the supermarket. That's where we get all that stuff. All right.